call it to order, but I don't see it on yet. There you go. There you go. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, meeting of the Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission, March 14th, 2024. At this time, I'd like to appoint the vice chair to chair for this evening's meeting.
First thing we'll do is stand up and pledge allegiance. Thank you. I pledge
Allegiance to
Allegiance to the flag of
States
the
of
United States of
to the
America,
republic,
Republic,
which stands,
which stands one
under
nation,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
And the next thing we have is, just so I can read this fire evacuation announcement. In case of fire, for anybody who hasn't been here, we hope it doesn't happen, but there are two ways to exit the chamber. One behind you, the way some of you come in, and the other one is to my left, through the exit and down the stairs and out of the building. That tends to take care of the evacuation announcement. Next thing is roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Terrence Lynch,
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
John Petronella is here. Francis Alimo,
Here.
Joseph Muley is absent.
Absent.
Kenneth Alinsky also absent. Vinnie Grillo.
Here.
Christian D'Antonio.
Here.
Patrick Hooper.
Here.
And Walter Crizel.
Here. Next thing on the agenda I'd like to get to is the approval of minutes of February 22nd.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 22nd.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Unanimous, I think.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, you have a question?
There's a couple of corrections on the minutes.
Okay.
Under number 1, second sentence, it should say Vice Chair Terrence Lynch. And then on page 5, 1, 2, 3, 4th, 5th line down, it says if, it should say it. Further explanation how it falls under the subdivision approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody okay with that?
We voted.
This as amended.
As amended?
Yep.
Yeah.
Amendment to accept the corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
didn't know if you were going to seat any of the,
I didn't hear you.
are you going to seat any of the other commissioners,
Alternates.
alternates?
Okay, yeah, I will. I
Okay.
had I told the secretary and everybody else, but anyway, in replacement of Ken Helinski, Walter will be voting tonight, and in place of Joe, Christian will be tonight. Next thing on the agenda is the town attorney's report. Any questions or comments on that? Anything from staff on that?
No updates at this time.
All in favor of accepting the attorney's report, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Nothing from the zoning officer, Laurie?
No, sir.
Okay. Public participation. Is there anybody that would like to speak before the commission that has, talk about zoning, but has nothing to do with on the agenda for tonight? Hearing none, we'll keep rolling along. Any bond releases, Laurie?
No.
Okay. Authorization for administrative approvals, I don't think we need that. Do you have a report for us tonight, or just what we have?
What I handed out, the the flyer for the 79th Annual Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies Conference.
Okay.
It's actually being held next, or in 2 weeks, on March 28th, which is the night that we have a meeting. This happens every year. The ZBA goes, and you guys tend to not. So I suppose you could, maybe a select few could go, or, I mean, if for some reason
Do
there's...
they have something against us where they always schedule it on our meeting
I've
nights?
actually asked
I
if
was
they
just
could...
wondering, you know?
I actually have asked if they could, like, move it to a different Thursday every so often, so, because I'm sure we're not the only ones in this boat. So,
Okay.
I mean, if you want, we could talk about where the agenda lies for the next meeting, and you could take it from there,
Okay.
so. And nothing else earth-shattering.
Okay. Any outside correspondence that we have from somebody else? No, hearing none. Any commissioner correspondence? Anybody have something they want to say? Huh? Walter? Okay.
Through the chair to the staff, I noticed the railroad guys are out working again over in the eastern part of town.
Okay.
Is there a way to get a inspection report for the bridge that goes over the Scannick River? If one was ever done. Because I understand they want to bring the biofuel up here, and they also want to bring French fries up here, is what the last I heard. But that was 20 years ago on the French fries. So, but I don't want to see another East Palestine when that rail car hits that bridge and that bridge collapses, because that bridge is old. So I don't know if there's a way, and I'm going to bring it up to the council too.
Yeah.
If there's a way to request somebody had to have done an inspection, so we could have our town engineer go over that inspection and see if it's
Yeah, it's a little bit out of the purview of planning and zoning, but I'll see what we can do.
I'm just asking, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever we can do.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm going to
I'll ask,
attend the next council meeting and ask the same thing, so.
yeah.
It should be checked by our own town engineer to make sure, because like I said, we don't want another East Palestine. That's all I have to say, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I got,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I got something, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Frank.
Yeah, the correspondence, not really correspondence, just a thought on the agenda tonight. Just a point of order. If we want to switch things up and have the other ones go before the Felician Sisters, I think the other ones might be rather quick, and I don't know if anybody else is interested in doing that. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. Just any discussion on that? What Frank is suggesting is that we change the agenda and put the old business on Moody Road.
So I'll make a formal motion to suspend the rules and to move item 14 after item 16.
Okay, any questions, or is there
I'll
a
second.
second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Frank seconded. Any discussion on that?
Is this just for the one item or both items that are after?
Both. He said
totally
new business
after.
was 16,
So we'll move 14 before 17. How's that? Does that
so
sound
it
better?
moved 525 Enfield Street and Hazard Avenue.
Okay, so that was,
No, there's three items.
Item
so-
14.
yeah, so,
Yeah,
Before
it's-
that's what I'm
item
saying, there's
17.
three items, one's going to be tabled, but
right.
Yeah,
we should,
but we're just moving item 14 to before item 17.
And while we're at it, I'll make a motion to table the one that wants to be tabled, the brewery.
Oh, we should vote on this motion first.
Yeah,
so 14 before 17, that was
yeah.
made by Walter.
And seconded by Frank.
If everybody's in favor of that, raise your hand.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank
But
you.
I'll make a second motion to table item 16, which one is it? 16A,
Yeah. 1931, yeah.
SBR 1931.
Second. And we got a motion and a second to table.
and who was the second? Okay, thank you.
We'll table that. All in favor of tabling that until the 11th, I believe, isn't the 11th of
Correct,
April
April
the date
11th.
they asked for?
Yes.
Okay, till the 11th. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, now,
And then,
new public hearings, that's going to be in about,
what about the other new business on the other side of the agenda? Are you going to take that up for, ahead of,
was,
Well, no, we're moving 14 to before, we're moving 14 to before 17, so it's right after B. So we're moving everything
oh, I
up.
see, okay.
what we're going to do is,
So now we're gonna start
Now I
with
got it.
Old business.
15.
we're going to start with old business.
Yep, which is tabled.
No, 15 is not tabled. 1927,
Oh, yeah.
210 Moody Road,
That is not tabled, I'm sorry.
site plan review for self-storage.
Yeah,
I think you guys are up.
yeah, SPR number 1927, 210 Moody Road, application for site plan review for self-storage development, Top Knot LLC, applicant owner, map 100, lot 0011, I-1 zone.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if you go to the bottom. Oh, you want me? Was it here?
No, they're PowerPoint.
Was it a PowerPoint or
It says binder one, so you just need binder for the.
which I upgraded? All right, well, Jim is getting ready. I'll introduce myself. For the record, my name's Megan Hope. I'm an attorney with Altrin, Pearson, and Glastonbury. I'm here tonight with Jim Sakonchik. He's our professional engineer for the project. The applicant, J.R. Clisham, should be joining us. He is flying in to come to this meeting, and it was delayed in Washington, D.C., so he should be here shortly. Should we need him, we did give the bulk of our presentation for the site plan application at the commission's meeting at the end of February. At that time, we had done the whole presentation, and I had indicated that there were some outstanding items that we knew we were going to have to come back for. And really what that ended up being was 3 items. The first was we were waiting for the town engineer to review our responses to comments and give the okay. That did occur on March 7th, so that is part of the file, but the town engineer did indicate that the previous engineering concerns have been addressed with the plan's latest revisions dated 3/7/24. So with that, we do have sign-offs from the planning department, engineering, health, fire marshal, building department, water pollution control, and police and fire. So that's all been taken care of. The other 2 items had to do with the use provisions in the lease. I did provide that to staff, and I believe, was that handed out, Lori? The lease? Or not lease, the rental agreement.
Yep.
Yep, so I did provide that to staff, and I did, it's obviously a little bit long, of a rental agreement, but I did highlight section 10, which is, I think, really the intent of the question that the commission had last time, which really was what sort of uses are allowed or not allowed within these self-storage units. And just to go through that quickly, you are going to see that the occupant isn't allowed to use the space to store any animals, any animal food or feed, any seed, any explosive, firearms, anything highly flammable or dangerous, anything unlawful. If you go further down into that paragraph, there is a specific section on not storing any gasoline or any other petroleum-based materials. And if you go further down, which is, I think, one of the main questions the commission had, it indicates that the occupant is prohibited from performing any vehicle maintenance inside of the unit or anywhere on the property. And that includes not only cars, but also motorcycles, dirt bikes, scooters, ATVs, and boats. So I know that that was something that we had discussed, but that is part of the agreement. So we have submitted that as part of our materials. And the last item was the commission was looking for some additional landscaping along Moody Road to soften the storage units. And so Jim has made those revisions to the plans, and we can go through those now. Thank you.
Any comments from staff at this point?
No.
Any questions from the commission? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jim Sakonjic. I am the engineer. I prepared these plans. And what we did is all along Moody Road, where we have our frontage and our exposure to the people on Moody Road, we did plant trees every 50 feet on center along our frontage, and then as it goes around the corner, we wrap some additional trees right there. And the trees we chose carefully because we are under power lines, so we chose the type of tree that Eversource recommends for underneath power lines. And of course, the rest of the site would be a lawn. And over here, where we have that 50-foot buffer, as part of the motion, the staff has incorporated good wording that allows us to meet with them in the field and determine how best to make that buffer work well. So that is the highlight of what we did to landscaping plan, and it's now a dedicated sheet S6, so it's just dedicated to landscaping, so it won't be confusing with like the erosion control plan.
Okay, thank you. All right. Since nobody has any questions here and the staff is all set, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve site plan review 1927.
I have one question, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I did have one question regarding the landscaping plan. On sheet, and maybe it's me, but on sheet S6, I'm looking at you're listing your quantity of number 7 of the Japanese dogwoods, and I kept on
Yes, sir.
looking, and I only counted 6 on the plan.
I guarantee the number you see there will be in the field, because that's
Okay.
what we use as a check. And so
Okay,
that'll just be a fielder's choice where he thinks it best will fit. The numbers control, I'll put that in the record.
I was looking at it, show me it, so I know I'm not crazy, but I kept on looking. I only counted 6, and I know it shows 7, but I'm sure we'll get to 7. Other than that, that's all I have.
That's it. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Sorry, I have a question about the landscape
Okay.
as well. Yeah, it appears from the plans the landscaping alongside the road is behind the fence. On the side of the.
It is behind the fence, yes.
So was there a technical engineering reason for that?
Well, we try to put the fence, close to the property line.
Yep.
And, this way, we sell security. And that is part of our sales pitch. We are doing an improved fence. There's not just chain link, it's, aluminum type fencing. And it also acts as a partial visual buffer, which I think, even though you can see through it, it is a visual buffer. So it was just our engineering decision to do it that way.
Yeah, because I mean, and maybe I'll ask for other thoughts here, because my thought is thinking about it aesthetically, coming from the road, I think it would be a more pleasant site for the residents to see the trees closer to the road rather than behind the fence.
The trees in front of the fence, maybe.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. The trees in front of the fence, so closer to the road. So it would be road, trees, fence, rather than road, fence, tree.
Go ahead, Vinnie.
Commissioner, I know what you're saying, but in the same token, the reason why the fence, what they're basically gaining as much property as they can that they're paying for. Anything on the other side of that fence will never get used. Actually, if you look at the fence that they're putting up, it would look a lot. Visually, I don't see it being a problem with the plants. I'm really happy that you added them trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because that That's what I mentioned, so that was great. That's all I, that did it. But that's why they're putting it, if they put the trees in front of the fence, they're gonna lose another 10 to 15 feet of property. Because you can't put the fence up on it. Do you know what I'm?
Makes sense.
So I think behind the fence that they included in this, it will look just as nice.
Okay.
Personal preference. I
Yeah.
know a little bit about that fencing part.
Right. Yeah. No. Makes sense. I wanted to see people's thoughts.
Walter?
Also, with the trees being on the other side of the fence, you're going to get all the trash from the street. It's just going to mingle in with the trees, and it's not going to look nice.
Fair
The
point.
fence will look nice right up to the sidewalk or whatever is there, and the trees will be on the inside, so nobody will see the trash or anything around the trees.
Good point.
Any other comments, concerns, questions? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve SPR number 1927, application for site plan approval to allow self-storage buildings and associated parking, driveways, and ancillary improvements at 210 Moody Road, Top Knot LLC owner, J.R. Cleasham, DBA, Connecticut, self-storage applicant, I-1 zone, per the reference plans, reports, and application materials listed herein, and with the following 34 conditions and modifications.
Second.
Okay, if you could call a roll. Mr. Secretary?
Francis Alimo.
4.
Linda DeGray.
4.
Vinnie Grillo.
4.
Terrence Lynch.
4.
Christian D'Antonio.
4.
Walter Crizel.
4.
And John Petronella is 4.
Thank you.
The approval is had. Good luck with it. You made it in time to hear her say yes. The next item on the agenda, as it was changed, is site plan review 1932. Artioli Dodge.
Yep. SPR number 1932, 525 Enfield Street, application for modification of site plan. SPR 1929, to split the site into 2 phases to allow occupancy prior to final completion. 525 Enfield Street, LLC, applicant, owner, map 33, lot 263 to 267, BG zone.
Okay. When you're all set, put name.
Good evening. My name is Dana Steele. I'm a professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates. Our office is at 1 Showham Road. Bob Artioli's with me this evening. We're here to ask for your approval to modify our site plan approval, which was approved before, to reconstruct the building at Artioli Dodge that burned down. And they're well underway with the construction, but due to some unforeseen issues with delays in electrical services being ready. Some of the switchgear and electrical components are taking a long lead time on those, and it's delayed their ability to get back into the building and operate. They feel they can move in partially into the showroom portion, the front portion of the building now, and then finish up the service area in the back, and that will help them to transition back to this site a little bit quicker. So the items that are yet to be completed are paving of the top course of pavement and some of the light fixtures that were going to be relocated haven't been relocated yet, and some of the electrical work. So we've submitted a plan that I have on the board here, which shows the area in red that has not been final paved, has just a binder course currently, and so we're asking for your approval to make that modification. Since the approval didn't specifically say we were going to have 2 phases, we're asking you to now approve with with this two-phase approach. We will be providing a bond for the items that are not completed, so that to ensure that they do get completed in a timely manner, so the town will hold a bond for that. The town engineer has reviewed the items that are left to be done and has agreed on an amount, has determined an amount that's appropriate. So we're hoping that you'll allow, they'd like to move in on Monday. So they're hoping that you will cooperate and give us an
Are
opportunity
you trying
do
to
that.
push us, Dana?
I hope you don't take it that way, but yes.
Okay. Let me hear comments from staff, and then we'll open it up.
Yes, so as Dana explains, this is actually a pretty basic application. We don't, as staff, don't have the ability to phase plans per the zoning regulation. It has to be done by you. But we have no problem with this. I did receive a comment from Earl Prevention, the fire marshal. I'll just read it real quick. I have received and reviewed the revised site plan for Ardiali Dodge, received by this office on January 19th, 2024. The fire department has no negative concern relative to these changes and are okay with this being approved with the following exception. And I have brought this as a concern from the first ART we had on this project. I do not want shrubs or bushes within 5 feet of all directions of the fire hydrant located at the corner of Enfield Street and Fremont Road. Additionally, all efforts should be made to make this hydrant freely accessible and not blocked for use in an emergency. The DOT maximum height requirement should address this. So I would make a recommendation that that be a site-specific condition.
All right.
That would be fine with us, though. That was, he mentioned that during the last time we were here and we did a modification, so it would be redundant, but we're happy to have it listed as a condition again.
Just as a reminder.
Yeah, sure.
So, actually, we've already prepared the performance bond estimate, so they have that in hand. So hopefully if they get that to us on Monday, we can sign off, so.
Okay.
We've been working with them to try to move this along.
Questions, comments from the commission?
I didn't see a parking lot full of Dodges, so I guess.
Huh?
I didn't see a parking lot full of Dodges, so I
Go ahead, Linda.
First off, been by your place twice today. It looks fantastic so far. Any idea when the paving will be done?
I can answer that. My name is Scott Brace. My name is Scott Brace with PDS Engineering and Construction out of Bloomfield. And so we're planning on starting up the paving work once the plant's open, which again is subject to weather and their opening schedule. And then essentially it's kind of waiting in line till we can get some asphalt because they'll prioritize some of the town and state projects first. But as soon as we can get the asphalt in, we're going to start doing the asphalt removals, and then we'll work our way into the grading and repaving.
So sometime April, May.
We're hoping to,
Okay,
definitely
great.
start
Thanks.
by April.
Unless it stays at 70 degrees.
Please, I hope so.
Any other questions or comments, concerns? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan modification for 2 phases under special permit to reconstruct and expand previously approved auto sales and repair facility at 525 Enfield Street, 525 Enfield Street LLC applicant owner, Dana Steele PE applicant's rep, map 33, lots 263, 265, and 267 BG zone, and Enfield Street design overlay per the reference plans, reports, and application materials listed herein with the following modifications and conditions. Note that we are going to be inserting and adding a site-specific condition, number 9, per the fire marshal's comments recently received, to not have shrubbery around the fire hydrants. So making it a total of 27 conditions as listed with that insertion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, concerns? Mr. Secretary, if you could call the roll.
Francis Alamo,
4.
Linda DeGray,
4.
Vincent Grillo,
4.
Terrence Lynch,
4.
Christian D'Antonio,
4.
Walter Crizel,
4.
and John Petronella is 4.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
The motion is approved.
I had one question for staff. So when I need to submit final plans, do I have to wait for an approval letter? Or for something like this? No? Okay. All right, great. Okay.
Moving right along. I think Carl got scared and ran away.
Next up,
Next item on the agenda is is the Felician Sisters Elderly Housing.
the Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at their regular meeting on Thursday, March 14th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers at 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following. Public hearing number 3088ZA, application to amend the zoning regulations to allow the use of elderly housing in HR 33 zone under table 4.20 and under subsection, or new subsection, under section 4.40.3, housing for the elderly, Felician Sisters of North America Real Estate Trust, applicant, Carl Landolina, representative.
Okay, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Good evening. Carl Landolina, representing the applicant, Felician Sisters of North America Realty Trust. To my right is Bridget Armstrong. She is here with Felician Services.
Representing the Felician Sisters.
Representing the Felician Sisters. The Felician Services is a subsidiary or arm of the Felician Sisters. Before I jump into my presentation, because this is not our first time appearing before this commission on this particular piece of property, certainly this application is a new one. Last time, and I'm trying to figure out, watching what's going on tonight, you have 7 regular members. I think 2 of them are absent.
2 of them are not here, so we have
So you've
alternates.
appointed Christian and Walter. And Mr. I'm sorry? Patrick is an alternate, but he's, okay. I know last time, Mr. Petronella, you had, did you not step off? Or is whatever, or are we thinking of a different application?
No, you're correct. You're correct, but
The conflict has resolved itself?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And last time, Mr. Grillo, you had recused yourself also. So I'd ask you at this time, are you, and the reason I think was during one of the applications, you had made some statements. Do you feel, I mean, I'll leave it to you. I can't, you feel it's appropriate for you to vote on this tonight or act?
Actually, I do. I thought about it. I did a little bit of reading and stuff, and I don't think this has anything. Actually, this is something totally different than what the first one was.
Right.
So I don't feel any remarks. And once again, any statements that were said was towards something else and was in the past and not now. So I don't feel that I need to step off this at this time.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood who was going to be participating. So you've got 7 full members here tonight. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Petronella and Mr. Grillo. So just briefly, in terms of the history of this thing, this is the 3rd time we've appeared before this commission to talk about the Felician Sisters campus at 1297 Enfield Street. The first time was on an informal basis to kind of give the commission an idea of what was transpiring at the campus on Enfield Street, and that the Felician sisters were concerned about the long-term viability of the property there, and had gone out to for RFQs, requests for qualifications, to explore alternate uses for the property so that the campus could be maintained essentially in its existing condition, to maintain the buildings that were there, because I'm sure you're not surprised to learn that, at one time there were over 100 or so. Hundreds, okay. Now I think there's 23 sisters living on the campus. One of the buildings, the St. Felix property, is totally vacant. The St. Francis house was turned into senior housing, as it were, in 2009. So this board approved an application by Felician Sisters to allow 22 senior housing units inside of the St. Francis building. And I just put that out there, given what we're trying to do tonight. I don't know how that occurred, but it did. And so we like the idea of seniors living at St. Francis, and the hope is tonight that we can actually formally put something in the regulations that would allow that use to continue. So we came here in front of you. We talked about the different uses in the zoning regulations that might be appropriate, or a mechanism for us. And based upon that, we came to you with a plan to change the zone to a special design district. And this commission voted that application down for some, for justifiable reasons. So we went back to the drawing board and said, well, what would be the next thing that we'd like to see there? And given that the St. Francis house was turned into senior housing, we thought that was a way to move this project forward, so to speak. So what you have in front of you tonight is a proposed text amendment to two sections of the zoning regulations. And last Thursday, we met with some of the residents who are here tonight. And rather than go forward last time when we were on the agenda, we decided to push it off a couple of weeks so that we could get their thoughts about where we were headed, and specifically with respect to our text amendment, what they might like about it, what they might not like about it. And based upon that discussion, we actually amended the amendment to something yesterday, I think, and we shared that. Does the commission have that final version?
I don't think I have it.
No, I sent it to you yesterday.
Oh,
Okay, well, I'll provide that to you guys. No, I think I have like 10 or so yes. So given that what I'm about to talk tonight, you maybe have not seen, it's not that many changes to what was probably in your package. We wanted to at least come and introduce you to the latest changes. And, we'll leave it to your discretion as to whether you think, you'd rather have another 2 weeks to look at it, but we'd like at least to make a presentation to you tonight. Thank you. So starting off with what you've just been handed, we'd like to add as a special permit use, housing for the elderly on table 4.20. So right now, housing for the elderly, which has a defined term in your regulations for housing for 62 persons of age and older, is allowed in all of the residential zones except the HR 33. And I'm sure that was intentional, given what you're about to hear or probably already know about the regulation as it stands now before our proposal. So the first thing is we would need the commission to approve adding in the housing for elderly line in the table the SP, which is special permit use, under that line, HR 33. One of the things that came out of our discussion is that below that on the table, if you're looking at table 4.20, the next use is multifamily residential units or uses, which has a footnote 13. And one of the things that we discussed at that meeting with the neighbors was they thought that we should have the same footnote appropriate and added to the table for housing for the elderly in this particular zone. What footnote 13 says is see section 4.30.2, right, which is conversion of buildings for residential purposes, which essentially allows one-family residential uses to be turned into 2, 3, or 4-family buildings under certain conditions. And the section goes on to say, the footnote, the Water Pollution Control Authority must be consulted on all proposed multifamily residential uses within the HR 33. So we've added that now. So what we're asking for is for you to add the letters SP with the footnote 13 on the table, so that the same footnote that applies to other multifamily residential uses in the HR 33 as far as consulting with the Water Pollution Control Authority would be a footnote that would apply to these uses. And obviously it would. We'd need permission of Water Pollution Control Authority to tell us, hey, we had capacity, they had capacity for these uses, and that connections were viable and possible. And we would do that at the special permit time when we came in for that permit. So that's one of the things that the residents, the neighbors suggested, and we said, okay, that's a good idea. Then there was a typo in the section of what we're actually asking to change. So we're asking then to change section 4.40.3, which already goes to J. So we said, well, all right, our section should be K at the end. So the rest of it would go at the end of that section, 4.40.3, which is the housing for elderly section that exists now in the regulations. So what I'm going to do is compare our proposal, which would be strictly for these types of uses in the HR 33. It would not generally apply to that same use in the other residential zones. They would be allowed under the current regulations. So under the current regulations, if you own 2.5 acres, you are eligible to come in for a special permit for housing for the elderly. We decided that that was too small of an area and probably would result possibly in more of these uses in the HR 33 than you thought was appropriate, which is probably why it was excluded in the first place. Now, as you know, on the west side of the HR 33 zone, they're all very small lots. I don't think any of them are more than 1.5 acres or 2, except for possibly the property owned by the town where the school is. On the other side, there are some larger lots on the east side, which vary from, some small lots to 1 and 2 acres to some that are in the 9-acre range. And there are actually 6 parcels on the west side, 5 on the west side, and 1 on the west, 5 on the east, that are 10 acres or more. And we'll talk about those in a second. So we don't want, we're not asking for you to approve a regulation that would make properties down to 2.5 acres eligible in the HR 33. We thought something bigger was appropriate. So we picked 10, all right? And why did we pick 10? Well, one of the reasons is that your, and I'll pass these to Lori. This is your affordable and fair housing plan, which you guys just approved. So I don't have 10 of them. No, I don't have. I can give you 2, one for the record and one for yourself, Lori. But these are This is the plan that you adopted May 30th. And one of the things that it talks about in this plan and also in your plan of conservation and development is the idea of decreasing, in this case decreasing because most of your multifamily uses are allowed on much larger lots. There's one that requires, I think, 60 acres. And then there's another one that's probably in the 25, 30 range. But there's either in the Fair Housing and Affordable Housing Plan and or in the Plan of Conservation and Development, it talks about a strategy of considering reducing that number of acres allowed for multifamily uses, all types of multifamily. We're just talking about senior housing down to 10 acres. So since it was a number that it's out there in the universe, so to speak, we thought that that was appropriate. The other reason is a more legal one, and there is, I'm sure some of you know, and staff can talk about this if they feel the need. There's a principle under the general statutes. It's called the uniformity principle, which requires that zoning regulations be uniform throughout a particular district. So, for example, if you have a business district and you allow restaurants in that business district, you must allow restaurants in any place in the business district. So there's an exception to that, which comes out of a case in the Connecticut Supreme Court called Ron Carey versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Windsor Locks. And in that particular case, it was our office just anecdotally proposed a regulation that would allow a use in the business zone in Windsor Locks that required certain criteria. One was that you must have frontage on Route 75 and you must have a certain acreage, sort of like some of the stuff we're seeing here tonight. And someone who didn't, it happened to be the Ron Carey family, who didn't have a property with frontage on 75, challenged that and said, you're violating the uniformity principle because you're creating a use that's only allowed on certain properties within this entire business zone. And the court said, if the use is allowed by special permit, which is what we're asking for, and it's a use which you may want to have a few of them, but not a lot of them throughout the district, you can set these kinds of, not necessarily arbitrary, but standards so that you only get a few of these uses because they might be important uses and they might be important in that zone, but you don't want them, and the court used the word proliferate, throughout the entire business zone. So that's sort of how we've crafted this. And that's sort of where the 10 acres come from. That there are dozens and dozens of properties within the HR 33, but how many of them have 10 acres? Now, the court also said if you have a number or a criteria that only applies to one property, that's not right. That's sort of like a spot zoning issue. So you got to show me that it applies to more than one if you want to have a limitation that says, but it doesn't apply to all of them. So what I went through, and again, during the discussion with the neighbors, we talked about, well, why not increase it to 20 or 25? And I said, if we go up to that, then we've only got one property, which is ours, and I think that'll violate the uniformity principle. So then we talked about with the neighbors, well, how many properties do we think they are that are 10 or over? And everyone could pick out a few that were, there were a few that were close. And one of them was actually owned by one of the neighbors and said, oh, no, I don't want you to go down to my number because, but it was just below 10. So today I went on to the GIS and I said, well, how many are there? So I found 6, including our property, that are in the HR 33, at least partially, that would be eligible to apply for elderly housing under this regulation, just in terms of acreage. All right, let me tell you what they are. They're obviously us. The property next door, the Little Sisters of the Poor, they have 12 acres. They already have a fairly committed use there. I think there's 70 residents living in that building. Enfield Housing Authority owns one of them. They have 12.01 acres. The Cemetery Association owns one. They have about 17 acres. The Purple Heart Museum owns one. That's about 14 acres. And the Enfield Street School, the elementary school, which the town owns, is the last one. That's on the west side. That's 13.8. So there are 6 properties that conceivably could be eligible under this regulation. And since this regulation will hopefully if you adopt it, probably be around longer than me and some of you other members. It's, like I know for a fact, I went to school in Windsor Locks, and we used to have, when I went there were 4 elementary schools. Now there are 2. All right? One of them's been turned into senior housing. So especially with an elementary school, because it works well, they're usually a single story as opposed to a high school, which might be 2 stories or whatever. So I guess if the Enfield Street School became obsolete, and given the lower numbers of younger people in most towns, including Enfield, I guess the town could use this regulation itself to try to turn that into elderly housing. They sort of retrofit, generally speaking, pretty nicely. As to the Purple Heart Museum, I know there's some buildings there. I'm not familiar with it. You've probably been there. There's probably a lot of open space back there. I don't know how large the museum building is. The cemetery, the Little Sisters of the Poor, the Housing Authority, they kind of speak for themselves as to whether they'd ever find the need to apply for something under this regulation. So that's how we came up with 10. All right, the next section talks about maximum density. When we first proposed this, we thought 6 was a good number. And that would have given us, we are about 26.8 acres. And you can do the math. I went to Windsor Locks, so maybe you probably can do your math quicker than I can. It was somewhere in the 140 range, let's say.
156.
Yeah, is that what the number was? Yeah, okay. So, and the neighbors said, well, would you consider 5? Which would give us about 136, we'd lose about, 25 units. And we did the math, and we looked at, because one of the reasons we're doing this is to, repurpose the St. Felix building, which is in disrepair and is totally vacant, and eventually repurpose the convent itself at some point in the future when that number of 23 is down to something maybe 0 or and the numbers at 5 still work for us, because the convent itself will, graciously fit maybe 70 units. So you take the 45 and the 22 that are there and you add 70, and that was how we kind of figured. But if, this new number causes us to go down to 60 in the convent, it's not an issue in terms of the overall project and what we're trying to achieve there. So that was the number that the neighbors suggested, and we said, fine, good with us. The minimum lot coverage is 25%. That's in the current regulation, so we thought we'd carry it over. And by the way, to go back for a second, in addition to 2.5 acres in the other zones, the density units in the other zones for this type of is 16. So we went to 6 thinking that was good, and they said 5, and we said, sure. So it's quite substantially lower than but those projects are different. We're trying to retrofit existing buildings. We're not trying to build standalone, because some of those projects would be more like an active adult kind of project with standalone buildings and, 1,800 square feet and all. That's not what we want to, do. The front yard would be the same, 60 feet. And again, that's not a problem for us because the first 200 feet of our property is in the historic district, at least the first 200 feet. And we go around the Admiral building, what is that called?
The school?
No, the old house.
Orrin Thompson.
Orrin Thompson, right? So that's in the historic district. So that is out of play. So anything we did would be at least 230 or 40 feet off of Enfield Street. The side and rear yards, we remain at 50. Let's move to parking for a second. So we had originally proposed 1 space per studio or 1-bedroom unit and 2 spaces per 2-bedroom. And the neighbors said, well, are you planning any 2 bedrooms? And we said, no, we're not. So they said, well, why have it in there? We said, yeah, that makes sense. So we crossed that out. So our conceptual plan, and the one came from staff because you guys did not opt out of the state regulation that said you couldn't allow more than 1 space per 1-bedroom unit. But our plan, which hopefully you'll see in a few months, actually we're proposing 1.5 spaces per bedroom. Because hopefully the folks that move in there will have plenty of people visiting them, which is what all grandparents like, right? So let's go to the height. So we went back and forth with this ourselves when we were discussing it, amongst the team, and we went back and forth with the neighbors. And the way you measure height on your regulations is you do a perimeter of the proposed area of the building, and you get a mean average of that elevation 10 feet around the building. And that is where you work off of. And in this particular case, the property slopes from west to east. So the addition we are probably going to be proposing, am I going the right way? Yes, slopes down. So in order to calculate where the mean elevation would be is more of a scientific and mathematical problem than I'm able to do. So it's possible that if we went with, let's say, a straight 35, it might result in a building that's higher than 35 because of the slope down. So if you take in the average here and then the average there, you'd get an average somewhere in between. So you wouldn't start measuring from the ground level, you'd be measuring 2 or 3 feet above the ground. And we don't want this building to be visible from Enfield Street. And it's going to be hidden by the St. Francis building, which is probably non-conforming as to height anyway. It's a beautiful building, but it's got different levels of roof and so on and so forth. But we also are going to provide, obviously, elevator service, and that shaft would probably be the highest point. The building will have a flat roof. That's our proposal. So rather than trying to figure out where to start measuring and how high that elevator shaft, we just said, well, if you're making or putting an addition onto an existing building in one of these projects, you can go 3 stories, because one of them will be an elevation walkout, so to speak, in the back. But if you're building a new building, a standalone building, which we are not going to be doing on any of these other eligible sites, you'd have to go with the 35 feet. And there's a footnote there which says that we base the density on the area of the entire parcel, which is 26.8, we think, times 5. You do the number. We're going to propose 45 in St. Felix. We've got 22, and whatever's left over will be attributed to the convent. In the interior, there's no reason to touch the exterior of that building and put an addition on. There's plenty of room to do the 63 or 64 units that will add up to that number that we're eligible for. So that kind of takes you through what technically we are proposing. There were a couple letters that I handed to staff, one from Mr. Goyette, who is chairman of the Commission on Aging, in favor of this proposal, and one that came from a third party, which Lori can provide you copies or read them into the record, whatever you propose. So the last thing is, under the statutes 8-3 subsection B, it says when you act out a regulation to amend the boundaries of a zone or a text amendment, you must consider not comply with, but consider the plan of conservation and development. That's your tool, all right? So this is your plan of conservation and development, which is, again, less than a year old. There are sections from this. I'll just put this in the record in its entirety. There are sections of this on housing, and I think some of them are pointed out by staff in their report about, parts of the plan of conservation and development with which this proposal would be consistent. Just very simply, early on in your plan, which means it has high priority for you, is preservation of historic resources, and I would think that this campus is very much a historic resource. And we want to adapt the use of the buildings that are there rather than tear them down or have another party, if we had to sell the property, tear them down, or whatever would happen to be. And we think that, this would be a way to protect the campus well into the future with the elderly housing there. And in your residential development housing section, which is Chapter 5, it talks about encouraging and provide for a diversity of housing types, tenure, and affordable to all incomes. Your fair housing plan, when it talks about, Don Poland did a good job of the demographics and housing in your town. And I think it's fair to say one of the things that he found was that there was a lack of suitable housing, not only for elderly people, but the lowest sort of income tier in town. So, again, not necessarily important for your consideration, but when we've come to you before, one of the questions, and the person who asked it most often is no longer on the board, but is this a pipe dream or is this going to happen? We already have funding for this project, for the first phase, which would be the 45 units. We have guarantees from the state of Connecticut for what's called a 202 HUD housing project. Now, one of the things that we had talked about with the neighbors, 202 allows intergenerational projects, i.e., for those grandparents who are taking care of their grandchildren, which happens a lot more in today's society than probably did when we were all younger. Your grandparents might have lived with you, but your parents were there too. But the two things you must, if you're looking for that kind of work on that project in a 202 grant and loan package, you must announce that intention at the beginning during the application process. We did not do that because it's not what we're looking for. And you must have some two-bedroom units. Our project was approved for a 202 package with 45 one-bedroom or studio. It's actually 41 one-bedroom units and 4 studio. So the intergenerational part is not something we're eligible for because we didn't ask for it, and our approval documents don't grant it to us. So these are strictly for persons of years 62 and older. So, so I guess with that, Bridget has just a few minutes of some slides to talk to you about the goal of Felician Sisters to preserve the campus the way it is now with the addition of one remodel in addition to the St. Felix building. And she could go through that, and I'll hand these over to staff.
Thank you, Carl. So what you're seeing here is a shot from the top of the campus, just pointing out that all of the buildings you see there are existing buildings, and the one that's circled that says remodeled is St. Felix, and that is the one that we want to begin to repurpose for senior housing. And then ultimately, probably 5 years down the road, we would then begin planning for a remodel or a repurpose of the convent, which is the longer building. So what you will notice is that there are no newly constructed freestanding buildings other than the addition that we would be proposing on the circled one. So over the course of 2023, we went out into the community. We had 3 different tours of St. Felix and the convent for the community to walk through. We collaborated on the vision that we have now. In order to keep the residents updated, we sent out over 1,000 letters in December, just giving people an update on the process. The people that we engaged with in the community included Senator Kissel, the Connecticut Department of Housing, the Commissioner and State Program Manager, the representatives from the town, including, at that time, the mayor, town manager, and town planner. And we met twice with staff who provided us input for the proposed approach, the text amendment that you're considering now. And so after all of these meetings, we came away with everyone wanted to preserve the beauty of the campus, that everyone seemed generally in agreement for senior housing only, no newly constructed buildings, and to limit the density really to just St. Felix and the convent. That the sisters, it's important to the sisters that it be green energy efficient. You should understand that St. Felix has been vacant for over 3 years and is deteriorating rapidly right now. We also all agree we want to maintain views from Enfield Street. And so this is a conceptual drawing. This is the front of St. Felix. And again, as Carl said, it's what our proposal is going to be is 45 apartments, 41 one-bedroom, 4 studios, no 2 bedrooms. There also would be a community life room and wellness center and health and wellness programs for the residents. And then outdoor amenities such as community gardens and updated walking paths. The St. Felix funding grant, the HUD 202 grant that Carl referred to, we were awarded a $10 million grant. Again, it's for seniors ages 62 and up. The household income is making less than 50% of the area median income. And rents for seniors are capped. Again, there's no intergenerational units. So thank you.
So just one last thing. I've met with these guys so many times and I hear things and I try to store them away, and I think this is appropriate with this particular project. As I understand, oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Okay. So as I understand it, there were, correct me if I'm wrong, there were 3 grants under the 202 program in the state of Connecticut this year?
That were awarded?
Yes.
Yeah, and one to the Housing
Yeah,
Authority.
2 in
here, the other
Medfield.
to us.
One was like downstate and I think Stamford or something like that. And the Housing Authority got one, and the Felician Sisters have the other. So of all the applications in the state, 2 of them went to the town of Enfield for senior projects. So obviously the Felician Sisters are happy about that, as I'm sure the town in general and the Housing Authority. Right now, the 22 units at St. Francis, there's a 40-name list, waiting list to get into that project. And I'm sure if you talk to the folks at the Housing Authority, they'd tell you that their list is miles long, you know. And it's, you know, people want to age in place. And they don't, you know, they grew up here, lived here, and they want to stay here. So that's really all we have, and if we'd love to entertain any questions that you do have, or.
Just a second. Laura, you have anything to add to this before we open it up for questions?
No, I do have the 2 letters in favor of this. I don't know whether you want it read into the record or just put into the record, or if the applicant has a preference.
If they're just placing the record, it's fine with us. If you want to have her, that's fine. I don't,
Okay
you
with
know.
me if you just
Yeah.
put them in the record. I don't know. Anybody got a problem with that?
They're both very much in favor. One's from David Guyette, Enfield Commission on Aging and Senior? Pardon? Sister. Okay. Sorry about that. Sister Anita Marie Tedonio, Felician Sister at Our Lady of Angels Convent, 1315 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut. So they're in the file.
Okay.
Can you push something there to get out of that slideshow so Frank could get back on the screen? I think you gotta drop that down.
Frank, you still with us?
There you go.
Any questions from the commission? Linda?
First off, thank you, Mr. Landolina, for answering a question that I had. How many properties in that immediate district were 10 acres or more? Second, through the chair to staff, am I correct to understand that this text change will be for that whole property, the 26.8 acres?
So actually, the text change is for that zone.
For that whole,
No, it's a text amendment, so it is eligible for the whole HR 33 zone.
okay, I just
So
want to make sure I was clear on that.
So any property in there, as you were just alluding to, that is 10 acres or more, would be eligible to utilize this text amendment.
All right.
It is not site-specific.
Right, it is not
and
site-specific yet.
There is 26.8 acres of this property.
And our
Thank you.
entire property is in the HR 33.
Yeah. All right, I
All of
just-
them are except for the Enfield School. Only the frontage is in the HR 33. The rear of that is in the R 33.
And stop reading my mind. Thank you.
I'm usually not good at that.
Anybody else? Questions? Frank, you got anything?
I got nothing, sir. Good.
Okay, then we'll open up the public hearing for people who would like to speak, if there is any. Do we have a list over there, Laurie, or for the people who want to speak? Thank you. Nikki Price. If you could state your name and address.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, Nikki Price, 1324 Enfield Street. First, let me begin with a thank you to Attorney Landolina in facilitating a meeting with the neighborhood representatives to discuss the proposed text amendment for PH 308. Let me repeat that, 3088ZA, an application affecting the entire HR 33 zone. After having time to digest everything, my uneasiness is with the maximum building height. The proposal for additions to existing buildings, 3 stories. Does this mean that you will be able to add 3 stories to an existing building of lesser height? As for new construction, the proposal fails to address lots with or without buildings. The proposal, in my opinion, should be lots with no buildings, 3 stories, 35-foot max. Lots with buildings or buildings, height not to exceed the height of an existing building or buildings. Waiver under subsection H shall not apply. In closing, I'd like to reiterate that the Commission's decision will affect all HR 33 zones. Thank you. And I just want to have to something. Enfield High School's in HR 33, I believe, and that's 51.07 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Lang? Did I read that correctly, I hope? Oh, okay.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Christina Lang, 90 South Road. And I don't have a whole lot to say except that is one of the best presentations and detailed ones about my neighborhood that I've heard before the Planning and Zoning Commission. I like the previous larger one myself, but this is so well done. I might want to apply myself. I'm over 62. I like the idea a lot, staying in town. There's a lot of us boomers and above, and we want to stay here if we could. And as you know, that's difficult. We don't want to stay in our houses that could be given to someone else or sold. So all I wanted to say is I really was appreciative of the detail. It's really timely. It's got funding, and Enfield getting 2 out of 3 funding offers this year. Let's use them. It's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patrick Thibodeau.
Hi, Patrick Thibodeau, 20 Core Street. Thank you. This is a great project. There should be joy in our hearts for seeing this approved. I just wanted to talk about a couple broader issues. I was in McDonald's not too long ago, and a woman came in there. I'm 69 years old, and she was older than me. And she was dressed ramrod, straight, and looked very professional. And she was sitting down in a corner with a manager applying for a job at McDonald's. And I'm thinking to myself, she probably didn't want her retirement to end this way, but maybe she wanted to work extra time. I don't know. I see a lot of people my age mostly quit, retired, do other things, but some are still working out of necessity because they have to. And when I look at the data, you see that in the age group of 65 to 69, 53% had no retirement savings. 31% have 100K or more in savings, but that's below like 200,000. So that's not a lot for contingency. In Enfield itself, there is significant demand, as the applicants pointed out. We have, the Housing Authority has 200 units of elderly disabled, and as of this month, they had a wait list of 86. So people on that list are going to be waiting years. The congregate housing at Mark Twain, where my aunt spent the last year of her life, and that's just a fantastic place. They have 82 units, and they have a wait list of 49. Still a very long wait. Of our total population of 41,000 plus, 17% are people aged 65 years or older. And then if you get into some of the income numbers into the Plan of Conservation and Development, there's essentially 2,200 plus households in our town with incomes of less than 25,000 or 14%. Now that's everybody. That's not necessarily all seniors, but that's a significant number. But if you go up to 40,000, then you still have a pretty significant percentage. So there's a lot of people who aren't going to make it, in retirement. They just aren't. And so we're going to need this kind of housing. We're probably going to need a lot more of it in time. I also want to address the issue that comes up. This town has kind of a little bit of a panic over the idea of how much housing that we have for affordable housing, right? The percentage, the 12.2%. And we say, we've met our goal, we met our need. But that's just an arbitrary political number. When I actually look at the data that the state puts on the website and do some sorting on the list here, Enfield's affordable housing, yes, is 12.2. But Middletown, which has a population of 47,000, has affordable housing at 22%. Norwich at 40,000 population has 19%. Groton, 38,000, 23%, and so on. We aren't as big in terms of affordable housing as we've seen. But the more interesting aspect of this is the one that really surprised me when I was looking at the data, was the CHFA numbers, right? Now, these are mortgages. Mortgages are invisible. They're technically affordable housing, but they're mortgages. People are buying their home and they're living in our town. And we have 500, this is the 2002 data, the latest number that's on the state website. And you can find this easy enough and put it in a spreadsheet and sort it. But we have 544 people in 2002 on CHFA. That put us almost in the top 10 of towns. And that really changed it. If you took that number, if you took that 544 out of our, just said for the heck of it, just playing along, took it out, you would actually reduce our total affordable housing to well under 10%, like a 9% or something like that, or a little less than that. So You know, the CHFA, and why are we so popular on CHFA? Because Enfield's really affordable. I mean, you can buy houses, single-family houses for under $300,000, $250,000. So we have that. We're lucky. We're still fortunate in this town that you can buy a great house at a small price. And that's why we have a very high percentage. That's why we're up with the big towns, the big cities up here in terms of CHFA. We're a good deal, and we have that. But that really skews our affordable housing numbers and disguises the fact that we really don't have enough housing in the areas for the income levels that we need it at. So, you know, just to close, this is a great project. We absolutely need this. I wish they could build a lot more. We're going to need a lot more senior housing in this town if we're going to meet our need in the future, because there are going to be more families in distress, particularly as the retirement waves really crest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me just say something quick.
Yeah.
Did you mean to say 2022 or 2002?
2022.
Okay, you said 2002.
Yes, it's in the data sheet. Just type in data.
Okay.
Housing gov.
Just clarifying that it was 2022.
Okay, we have Anne Marie. And I didn't want to attempt the last name, but if you could please give it to us, that'd be fine.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Anne Marie Galdenzi, 1330 Enfield Street. I hope you're all well today. And first, I'd like to thank Mr. Landolini and FSI for meeting with us. And it was a great meeting, and we had a great conversation. And I agree with just about everything in the text amendment. But there is just one point that I would like to bring up, because it does affect all of H.R. 33. And not that I disagree with anything with the plan that the Felicians want to do. I think their existing plan and what they're telling us today is a great idea. But my concern is posting it's okay for 3 stories. 3 stories is not currently allowed in the HR 33 zone, and I don't think it should be, just because existing buildings are unconforming to the current zone. I don't think we should change that, because it could be done anywhere else in the zone. But I do believe what the sisters want to do is great. So I would like you to consider this in your thoughts. I'd also like you to please keep the hearing open so that we might digest the effects of the amendment and have some of those questions answered that were brought earlier. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. That's all the list. Anyone else who would like to speak? Hearing none. Laurie, any comments? Or?
I don't have anything at this time. Oh, nope. I had a question, but I answered it myself.
Yeah, Benny.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Carl, this question for you.
Sure, absolutely.
This is easy. So this is an existing building, correct?
St. Felix's, yes.
Right, that we're building this in.
We're going to put an addition on it. Right.
So they want to put the addition on, so that's where it lies, where you're not sure if it's going to be the
building
3
is on-
stories high or
The building
not.
is at this elevation. The addition will be as it drops down and connected to it.
Right, under.
Yeah. So yeah, do you want to pull up did you have? I don't have. Oh, she didn't have it.
So you got basically the basement, which is living space, but I'm just going to call it a basement right now.
Yeah, it's sort of like a walkout. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's floor 1.
Yes.
Then you have 2 floors on top of that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And that's where we're coming over the 30-foot height that we're not sure on.
Yeah, we're just not sure. But what we would propose is the same thing that the neighbors would like. We'd like to re-engage with them and look at this one issue, because we want all of them to come back in 2 weeks and say, we love this thing. No
Okay.
objections.
So what you're saying to me is that you would just assume that we keep this hearing open?
And yeah, of course. You
Okay.
just got this stuff tonight. Staff got it tonight. Some of them got it tonight. I shared it with a couple of the members just yesterday. Yeah, because we like 100% of people that are going to talk about this to think this is a great thing.
There's one other thing I got confused. You said there was about 60 units, but then there was only 40 units in one. What about the other building? There's 40 units going in one, and then later, 5 years down the line, because you,
So in the building we want to repurpose
Yeah.
St. Felix that's vacant. In the building we want to repurpose St. Felix, there'll be 41 one-bedroom, 4 studios.
correct, I got that.
Okay, and then when we go to repurpose the convent, that would be approximately 60 to 65 units, depending upon your approval of the density.
And that's not an addition on the convent?
There's no
That's-
addition.
That's the existing. May I ask, how many floors is that one? Do you know?
The convent?
The convent.
3.
It is
3 stories.
It is
Yeah.
3?
And the addition on St. Felix, which is below, it's the drop down,
Yep.
it would, we're proposing 3 stories, but it would not exceed the height of the existing building.
Right, it actually might be even lower than the existing building because of the
Correct.
drop down.
It would be, not
Yeah.
only that, but the existing building is probably non-conforming as to height to begin with. It
Right.
could be 40 feet in height. I was visiting there today, and I kind of eyeballed it. It's,
So the second phase of this would be right on South Road, or the parking lot, and then the building that's on South Road? Or the side?
It would be the
How do I
convent.
get, let me see if I,
Go to,
is it here?
Yeah, I think the front of it is, but there's almost an empty building that we're all, what the Dear Sisters used to call cells.
that's the convent
All-
building. Yeah,
This is the convent building here.
Okay, we're good.
Does that help you?
Yeah, I'm good.
but
All right.
The middle of it is the.
School, Enfield Montessori Caravaggio
Yeah.
Academy.
No, there's 3 wings. The middle
Oh.
wing is, that's the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the
this is the
church.
chapel,
I
and
know,
then the 2.
I know where we're at.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So that would be, yeah, we'd repurpose that L-shaped or whatever whatever you want to call it, building. And it would max out at about 70 units. But if, taking the number 130, 5 times 26, we have 45 planned for St. Felix, 22 existing, so that's 67. That leaves us 63 for the convent. So, 70, 63, and, so maybe we make community space a little larger than we had originally planned or whatever, but the number would be 63, 65 in there.
Well, that's where I got that 63 number from
Right.
when
Yeah, when you did the math,
she was
sure.
saying the 45.
Yeah.
Quick, Lori, how far is it actually off? The only other major concern I have is historic. How far is it off the historic line? Do we know the new building that's going up? I know the
the
historic,
proposed
half of that property is historic.
The first 200 feet.
The first 200,
Yeah.
the first 200
Only
feet
the-
down here facing Enfield.
Oh, okay, it's only the 200 feet.
Yeah,
up.
so
Right.
the
Yeah.
the historic district is only 200
Okay.
feet back.
Yeah.
The historic zoning is the whole site.
I'm going to guess, Commissioner Grillo, that the addition on St. Felix would be
Completely out.
250 to 300 feet
Off the
off
road.
of the historic district line, roughly in that area.
Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
Okay.
We're proposing that it come out the back of the building, so it would be in this area.
More towards, that is toward Post Road, Post Office Road.
Well, actually, the freeway
Or the
back here.
91.
So back here, it would be back here. And I believe this is post office.
Yep, Post Office.
And this is
then
the highway.
91, the
So it's
highway's right
pointing,
there.
yeah, post office and the highway.
Yep, okay.
The Little Sisters of the Poor, they're in the middle there?
Want me to answer? The Little Sisters of the Poor are right here.
Yeah,
Right there, okay.
yeah.
So that whole middle is part of the school?
Yes.
Even that where you, above that other maintain, right there, above maintained?
Right here?
Yeah.
That is St. Francis Residence, which
Oh,
you
okay.
had previously approved for senior
Gotcha.
apartments
Okay.
in
All right.
2009.
Just clarifying my view here, that's all. Thank you.
The one last thing is, where you came up with the 10 acres. Lori, this is for you, I guess. I mean, that 10, I know where you got the number from there, but some people seem to be concerned that you can do that. So if you own 26.6 acres, why are we doing it at just the 10 acres if we're doing a special? Why didn't we just, if we're a special report, why is it at 10 acres? Why isn't it at
26?
26,
Yeah.
25.9 and a half?
Yeah.
You know what I'm going at? I'm just wondering, that 10 just
Median
threw me.
spot zone.
Yeah, so to answer that, Commissioner Grillo, when we sat down, they said, let's just put it at 25. And I said, no, we can't do that. And the neighbors asked the same question, which is a great question. The only reason I don't think we should do it is that it would make this property the only eligible property in the zone. And to me, that's cutting it a little close for legal scrutiny. Yeah, it's just a legal issue.
It's kind of like a spot zoning.
Yeah.
If only one address would be
Yeah.
eligible.
So
If we did that, Carl would be back arguing the other side of it.
I would, of course.
Walter? Oh, you
No,
were
I'm
set?
good. I'm also figured.
Frank, you got anything?
I do not. I am good.
Okay.
I got a question.
Anybody
Mr.
else?
Chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, I got a question for staff through the chair. Lori, do you recall the Enfield Housing Authority approval a couple of years ago? Was that
Somewhat, yeah.
Two stories or 3 stories?
Wow. I
I
wanna
think it's
say-
a 2-story building, or there's 2-story, but there are walkouts, I think, on the
Yeah,
back where there are
I
3
think-
stories.
Yeah, because the topography really undulates out there.
Yeah.
And they've changed it a couple times too. So I want to say
curious-
it's 2-story, but I remember we had that basement discussion.
Because
with
they had
those
units in the
buildings.
basement.
Yeah.
You know, not full, but
Right.
they also had storage down there.
So, but I think some of them were walkout. But
Yeah.
so there was basement and 2 stories
So
above it, I
I'm
believe.
just curious as to how that
Yeah, we could look into that.
looks at that. Could you please? Thank you.
To answer
Linda?
Commissioner Petronella's question, it is a 2-story, but in the back, it was 3 stories
Yeah,
because it
great.
had the walkout.
Yeah.
So, and I question the fact that there was no parking back there for those people.
Anybody else? Okay, then we'll be done for tonight, and we'll leave the hearing open.
Great.
So I assume we'll see you on the 28th?
Absolutely, and we'll engage with staff and members of the public on this height issue
Yeah.
and see if we can't,
Motion to keep it in?
I don't know, do we need a motion to keep it open, or we just keep it open?
Well, you need to motion to close it for the evening. Well, you need to motion
it,
to
yeah.
table the application.
Okay.
So I make a motion to table this.
continue it, rather.
Application number,
What is it, 3088?
public hearing 3088 ZA. Make a motion to table and continue it at the next meeting.
on which date?
March
I'm a
28th.
stickler on this.
March 28th, I
March
believe, is the
28th.
next meeting.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Second it.
All those in favor?
I'm sorry, who's?
That appears to be
Who
unanimous.
made the second?
John.
John,
Petronella's.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
guys.
Sorry,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's on there. Okay. Is anybody have any other business to come before this board? Applications to be received, Lori?
Yes, sir, there are 2. SPR 1933 at 7 Pearson Way. Excuse me?
Excuse me. Excuse me. We're still meeting here? Thank you.
All right. SPR 1933, 7 Pearson Way, Simpson Strong Tie Site Plan Modification. from originally SPR 1915 to expand parking by 30 spaces shown as deferred under prior approval. Pearson Enfield Development Co., Inc., applicant owner, map 75, lot 42, I-1 zone. Excuse me.
Excuse me, can we take
Chairman,
the
could you-
conversations outside, please?
And second is SBR 1934, 9 Powder Hill Road, administrative site plan modification to add a pavilion. Anthony Bellafronte, applicant, John Collins, owner, map L25, lot 67-9, R88 zone. That is literally, they are just putting in a pavilion for shade, so by the creamery. So-
Both of those are administrative approval, right? Simpson, strong tie too?
I mean, it really could be, because they've already got the approved plans and approval.
That's what I thought.
mean, so if
I'm not
you-
sure that needs to come before us.
Yeah,
'cause
I
recall
really
that.
don't think it does, but I mean, we definitely would require them to modify their final plans if it was approved as a admin approval.
Yeah.
So that's your decision, though.
Okay.
Just
Any-
because it's adding 30 spaces, but it's 30 spaces that have already been approved.
Yep.
Is that the commission's desire, or?
I'll defer to the Frank and let him make the final call on that. Frank?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say if it to be approved administratively, there's no need for them to come before us. It's already approved. Just go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it
I agree.
administratively and let us know how you make out.
I will do that.
I agree.
So that's both of them, or just
I
the
like
one?
both. I like that idea.
Yep.
Is that on both of them, or just the one?
Yeah, so
That's both.
the other one was pretty much, it's a slam dunk, it's an admin approval. It really should just be a zoning permit, but it will need the site plan to be shown, so.
Any unresolved issues? No
The
need for-
weather,
Huh?
the weather. Pick a day.
Executive session we don't need.
Motion to adjourn.
I hear a second.
Second.
All in favor, stand up.
All right.
Good night, Frank.
Good night, Frank.
Good night, Frank.
Night.
See you in 2 weeks.
Safe travels.